And welcome to Next Gen Tennis. I'm Mike Baugh, and today we have Bill Patton, and we're going to talk about alternative racket sports and how they can actually benefit the game of tennis. So, Bill, thank you for coming on.
Glad to be here, Mike. It's fun to be a regular.
How's everything in California treating you?
Well, I'm over pneumonia, so
Well, that's good.
yeah, I was a little closer to death than I like to be, but I'm fine now and loving life once again. So
That's excellent. So let's jump right into it, and let's just pick it right up and talk about the big elephant in the room, and that's pickleball.
is it an elephant in the room? Because I
Well,
don't.
for some people, like people like you and I, we just don't think it is. But then some people, they hear pickleball and their ears start burning and they start going crazy. And
Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's unpack that because some people have reason to be concerned. Some people have a real big reason to be concerned about pickleball if they're in a place where pickleball is taking over the tennis courts.
yeah,
I have a friend in Visalia, California, who's a tennis pro, really good guy, and he hates pickleball, and I don't blame him because pickleball players are coming and taking over the tennis courts and chalking their lines and
yeah,
making everything look terrible. And then people who would like to play tennis on tennis courts can't. So they have this big political brouhaha going on in town, at city council meetings to try to carve that out and figure out what they're going to do. So, I think it's smart if communities can build dedicated pickleball courts. That's good. But, we tennis coaches and players are not very good street fighters when it comes to. No, I'm serious. We're
yeah.
not very good at defending our turf. I think we need to get in there and do battle and go and be and have an uprising and go to city council meetings and say, no, absolutely not. You're not going to take our tennis courts away.
Yeah, but on the same time, I think we also need to be really stagnant of still growing the game too. I know there was just a study released saying that tennis has a 0.9% increase in play from last year. So there's a small growth, and that has been trending up for the last couple of years. But at the same time, if you're not playing a regulation game of pickleball, there are alternatives you can do on a tennis court. The middle of the net is 2 inches higher without doing anything. The sideline or the depth of the court, a pickleball court, is a foot on each side deeper than a tennis court from the service line. And then if you are lucky enough to be on a court with blended lines, then the blended lines are 6 inches wider on each side than a regulation pickleball court. So there's ways around. So if you take from the service line to the blended line, it's 42 by 21. A pickleball court is 44 by 20, and the net's 2 inches off. If we use the blended lines to play pickleball, it's really not that big of an issue. Now, when you get into competitive play where the court is a certain size, now we could be talking about something else.
Right.
But I think if we had a bigger push with using those blended lines and finding a compromise there, a 44 by 20 or 42 by 21, 2 inches in the net, the stuff's already there. It's already ITA approved,
Good,
ITF approved.
good luck compromising with the pickleball people.
Well, that's the issue. That's the issue. But if
So,
they want to put more courts in.
right. Okay, so now my understanding is that we want to kind of do a little overview of lots of different alternative racket sports, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to kind of get in the pros and cons, right? So I'm turning the interview around on you now, right?
All right.
All right. So what are the
So,
pros of pickleball? What's great about pickleball?
well, one of the great things about pickleball is you can have multiple levels of players playing with each other. you can have beginners, you can have learners getting on the court together, and it's very easy to learn because you're not having that overhead serve like you have in tennis. You don't have as much court coverage to cover in tennis because the tennis court is 78 by 27 for singles and 78 by 36 for doubles. In pickleball, it's 44 by 20. And so you have a lot less space.
44 by 20? I thought it was 40 by 20.
No, 44 by 20 is the regulation pickleball court.
All right.
So it's a lot less space. So that includes a lot more diverse skill of athletes and the population to be able to include a play because there's a lot less space to cover.
Like you could have some former first basemen and some bowlers could actually kind of come in and play pickleball, right?
Well, I know in different clubs that they have more golfers playing pickleball than they have tennis players playing pickleball.
Interesting. All right. So here's a negative. I'm ready. I think I'm just going to be the negative guy. So,
you're good at being the negative, Nancy.
But I can do it with a smile on my face. So, all right. One thing I'm hearing is that pickleball is a source of knee problems, and it's because of the kitchen. So people and their knees and their low backs are having an issue because they have to stay behind that line, and then they're doing this awful crouch, to get down there and get to some low balls. They can't even do a lunge to get to the ball because that would put them into the kitchen. So they're standing both feet right next to each other, and they're having a lot of knee and low back problems.
I think the bigger issue with the knees and the ankles is it's all being played on hard courts, and there's a lot of short stops and starts, and I think that's tearing up the knees more than anything else.
Okay, thank you for and I'm glad you could come to the dark side for a little bit there. Right.
Oh, I've looked at a lot of dark things on pickleball in the last couple of years.
Okay, good. And I'm not against pickleball. I mean, I think it's a great sport. I think it could be a transition to tennis. I think people can transition from tennis to pickleball and play a racket sport longer, and that's great. My club is actually, I'm going to be hosting an alternate racket sport demo day on May 5th at my club.
Well, happy Cinco de Mayo to you.
That's what that is. So, there will be some alcoholic beverages consumed later, I'm sure, right? Because our club always hosts something good that way. But anyway, I'm not promoting that part at the event. But anyway, so we're going to do pickleball, pop tennis, and spec tennis. And see, in my particular situation, my club has two pretty nice courts and two courts that have some very significant seismic issues, from earthquake land. And so the courts are stretched and cracked and whatnot. So we're going to redo those courts. And the idea is that they're going to be turned into either dedicated pickleball or dual use tennis and something else. And now the interesting thing is the way those courts line up, it's against the backyards of about 5 or 6 houses. So here's the problem that I have alerted my general manager that we could be facing a pretty significant complaint issue from the neighbors whose backyards butt up against those courts, and the pickleball sound is going to drive them up the wall. So now, how do you mitigate that? So our particular problem would be, well, we're not going to be playing before 11 a.m. You kind of have to be done probably by 4 or 5. So you can't have people waking up on Saturday morning to pickleball at 8 o'clock in the morning. Right? So the sound of pickleball is a problem, and yeah, they have they have the paddles and the balls rated for less sound, but it's not enough. I mean, even the most soft to sound pickleball is still pretty loud. And if you're not playing pickleball, you don't want to listen to pickleball.
Well, you can also play pickleball with an orange ball.
Okay, and that's official, or are the purists going to say no? That's not really pickleball.
That's not official. That's more of a training type of thing to kind of slow down the ball and give it, because the orange ball doesn't bounce up as high as a yellow ball and doesn't have the same shock as when you hit it with the paddle, because the ball's a little bit lighter and the core of the ball is a little softer than a regular yellow ball. But you can play, especially with beginners, pickleball with an orange ball.
Okay. All right. So the positives are I think pickleball is the smallest space of an alternate racket sport.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Now, I mean, I don't think we want to get too deeply into racquetball and
Is
squash.
it still live?
But those are sports that happen, and clubs have them, and people like them, and yet the transition from racquetball to tennis is the worst because of the use of the wrist, and I see people hurt themselves a lot. Yeah, so that's a problem. Squash will lead to having you hit slice forehands, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But I see the transition from squash to tennis being much easier than racquetball. But, I mean, those are some things that will always be around, because of the social structure that comes with them.
So one of the positives about pickleball is keeping that paddle up above your wrist is what you do a lot of the times in tennis. So it actually will help your volleying skills. But like you were saying, in the racquetball, there's a lot of risks going on because you don't have to control how far your ball's going to go because you're hitting the wall.
Yes.
In tennis, it's a major control game because if you hit the ball 80 feet, it's now out. Where if you were to hit a racquetball 80 feet, it's going to stop by the time it gets to 15 because there's a big giant wall in the way.
Okay, I'm going to come to the light for a second, and I think another thing about pickleball that's really strong is if you're an accomplished doubles player, you're just going to be a superstar in pickleball.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have an overhead, you have good returns, good volleys, and good overheads, you don't need much more. You're going to be a really good pickleball player. Yeah,
especially the better hands you have, because then you can do your third shot drops and then things like that. But you mentioned a couple sports, and I want to touch on them before we go any further so people know what we're talking about. And that's spec tennis and pop tennis.
Spec tennis is the one that's a little more arcane. So there's a guy, Nate Gross, in Northern California here who invented it. And so it's played with a paddle, but you could also play it with like a 25-inch junior racket. And it uses orange balls, and you play it on a space that's similar to a pickleball space, but there's no kitchen. So it's paddle or a small racket, orange ball, and a smaller space. And you can go on YouTube and find some of that. And it looks challenging. I mean, it's tennis. It's probably the closest to tennis on a smaller space. So I think my issue there is that you can't, though, truly play it on a regulation tennis court. You need to build your court on like one half of a tennis court. And so the way they do it is generally with throwdown lines. I'm more of a fan of chalking it out if that's what you need to do. But now,
what about painter's tape? Get some bullfrog tape.
Be a problem. I mean, I've seen court surfaces come up with painter's tape, and I've also seen on hot days the gooey residue staying down on the court, so it starts junking up your court after a while. So, I mean, I would be really cautious about that. I wouldn't put painter's tape down if it's more than 80 degrees. And even if it's very mild temperatures, you're still going to get, some of the surface is going to come back up, from that, even though it's a pretty soft tape. So yeah, I'm a bigger fan of chalking. A friend of mine has these weighted strings that he puts down. So he has heavy little weights, and he pulls the strings tight, and those create temporary lines. And because it's a really, really tiny little string that's colored, it's not a tripping hazard. So you'll just step on it and it won't do anything, and you can make it straight again in like 2 seconds. So
what's the visibility like on those strings? How well can you see it from like the other baseline or whatever?
You've got them painted like really bright blue, so
okay,
you can still see it from the other side. Yeah. So, and that's a nice nifty little thing if you're not too serious about it. You just want to have a little temporary thing so you can play some 60-foot tennis, or whatever your alternate racket sport is. So, at my club, I don't see our club becoming incredibly competitive about the pickleball. So let's move on. Let's move on to pop tennis, because now people, I don't know if they realize this, but pop tennis is the official alternate racket sport of the USTA. So regardless of your feelings of the of the USTA, having that behemoth behind you is helpful. Right.
So just for a second here, I don't want to break news or anything, but there is a rumor going around that in Lake Nona, they will be building pickleball courts, they will be building padel courts, and they will be building some different alternative racket sport courts there in Lake Nona. Awesome. So that's a rumor. I don't know if that's confirmed or not. If it is confirmed, then I hope you heard it here first. Okay. But
we shall see.
Yeah.
So, when we have our little demo day, I'm really rooting for pop tennis to be the one that takes over. And this is the game that you see played at the beach. So in Southern California, Venice Beach, and other beach locales, they have these little tiny tennis courts, and you can play pop tennis on a 60-foot court with an orange ball and a paddle with the holes in it, wooden paddle with the holes. And
about that thick.
Right. And I think you get one serve, and so it takes away from and the service boxes are really tiny. So it takes away from the advantage of having a huge serve, because you really have to be careful to get your serve in. Right. And then it turns into also a really nice doubles battle, and yet challenging enough. So I see pop tennis as being the closest facsimile to tennis itself.
Well, I've got one other one, but I'm going to bring that up later.
Hold on. Because see, from my standpoint, I think that if we're going to grow tennis, then we want to play on a format, and we want to play on a court and not have to have more than just a 60-foot line. So if your court, all it needs is a 60-foot line, and now you can play pop tennis, that's a huge plus.
Yep.
Right? And then the other thing is, pop tennis resembles real tennis more than any other alternative racket sport. So the transition to and from is the easiest. So I could see some 6-year-olds learning how to play pop tennis, much the way they would learn, they might learn 60-foot tennis or 36-foot tennis and graduate and play a little pop tennis with grandma and grandpa or whatever, and then graduate to the full court. So, and when I go when I'm in Southern Cal and I see the people at the beach, you see a really nice blend of people, young people all the way up to people in their 70s playing it. So So I like that standpoint. I like the fact that it's the closest to actual tennis, because the farther we go away from actual tennis. So, if pop tennis is here and spec tennis is there and pickleball's over here, then and then also pop tennis is not as noisy.
No. So here's one that I feel like is even closer to tennis, and we didn't discuss this in the pre-meeting, but that's touch tennis.
Okay.
And you get one serve. It's tennis, but on a smaller court. I believe it's about 40 feet long, 44 feet long. The service boxes are a little smaller, but you get one serve. You play with I think a 21 or a 23-inch racket, and you play with the high-density foam ball. And if you go on YouTube and you look up touch tennis, it's really big in the UK. I feel like that is it's awesome. Some of the points they have on there are just fantastic. I'm a big fan.
That's nice.
I'm a big fan. I also think
that I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of touch tennis. I've looked at it and I'm like, no. I mean, it just the fact that it's a foam ball and the smaller rackets, I'm just like,
yeah, but you should like foam balls.
Huh? Well, okay. Let's not start other confusing conversations because those balls that you're talking about are a training aid to help people hit a regulation tennis ball much better. But now, so I don't want to don't start that, Mike.
So let's go into beach tennis. Obviously, you need sand.
Yeah.
You need to groom the sand. You need to take all the crap that falls in the sand out before you play, so you don't get tetanus. There's a lot of work there that needs to be done because you're diving all over. It's a fun beach game. It's fun to play in the sand, but I don't think really beach tennis is going to appeal to about 90% of the country.
Well, who plays beach tennis past the age of, say, 35? And it's funny because with my association with this here Bones Original, I mean, we made beach tennis gear, and so one thing I learned is it's the crazy Italians that you can't beat in beach tennis. They're just nuts about it, and so that's a completely different thing because it is the most. I dare somebody to explain to me a more physical racket sport than beach tennis because of the diving around. I mean, high could kill you, but that's not really a racket, right? So I don't know. I think that's a really specialized sport, and I mean one of the little funny things that people like is that smash ball thing, where you got the paddles and the little rubberized thing, and it's a fun thing to like do a little volleying, for 10 or 15 minutes at the beach, and then you get tired of it because the other person can't hit the ball to you. It's fun. I mean, I think the bottom line is there's no telling someone what they're supposed to like, but the more people play different racket sports, the better. I mean, I think every tennis player should play ping pong.
Well, that's one I forgot to write down, but yeah, table tennis is very good. It's so much fun. There's actually bars now where you can go to and play ping pong. They have a ton of depending on where you go, one's called Spin in New York I went to. It's a good time. You just, grab a couple pitchers and play ping pong, and they've got different events going on. It's a fun thing.
Well, and then there are other, pong games that they play at colleges, that
but a lot of those involve your throwing hand, and it doesn't involve the paddle.
Right. So,
and a red solo cup.
Right.
It's
good for aim.
Yeah, very good.
I think a lot of people are actually motivated to lose at beer pong. I think they like to lose at beer pong.
It's not a bad loss.
Yeah, see.
Because even if you win, you're still winning. If you lose, you're still winning.
Yeah, but yeah, there's no racket there. So, but anyway, that was a tangent. So, yeah, no, I mean, I think people, every club should probably have a ping pong table. And
well, that's the thing. So
maybe even a couple.
I'm actually glad you brought this up because
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a ping pong table at my club, but we don't have the room for it.
That's rough. And then that can make a fun rainy day activity. And the reflexes of ping pong, because the ball's coming so fast, there's so little time in between. That's really good for developing hands and reactions and the volley game for sure.
Absolutely. Talking about reactions, one of the fastest racket sports you'll play, badminton.
I hate badminton.
Those shuttlecocks can really get after it.
Yes, little birdies. So in fact, I was teaching a private lesson on Saturday, and Anya and I agreed that we really hate badminton, but Medea likes it, and I'm like, sorry, Medea, this side of the court hates badminton. No, and it's really an interesting thing because badminton people will tease you as they beat you horrifically, and just the way the thing behaves, it's very interesting. I mean, it's so hard to read, but then the benefit there is the visual training. So I've trained a lot of my high school tennis players have also been badminton players. So the benefit, one of the benefits is that the badminton overhead is a biomechanically awesome serve in tennis. So very much similar, the very best ideal, serve mechanics. So that's a great thing. And then there's the whole really the speed of it and the ball recognition. Almost every badminton kid that I've ever had has been a really good doubles player.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Going to another game that involves that type of racket is or not that type of racket, but involves having quick reflexes. I think is padel.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big in Europe, big over in Spain and whatnot. It's just now getting its start here in the U.S. You want to talk a little, because we were both at the Racquet and Paddle show where Padel had the big glass cages and everyone was like crowding around and watching Marco and everything. Did you got to play, right?
I didn't play. I was.
Oh, you didn't play. Okay.
No, I was pretty tired. So, and as a result of all of the insanity of that weekend, I ended up getting really sick. But anyway, I did enjoy watching it, and I think one of the cool things about padel is like it's almost virtually impossible to cheat, because the only call is, did it bounce twice?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
and you're not scooping on a paddle.
Yeah, just everything else is obvious, So, and and I think it's just, it looks like a blast. I mean, and platform tennis are somewhat similar because you're playing the ball off of the wall. So the whole decision making, the quick decision making of, okay, I'm going to move here and it's going to bounce there and it's going to do this. I think that could even help some people with their doubles too, because there's some things, you get some really interesting situations where somebody like hammers their overhead straight down and now it's going all the way up against the fence. I don't know. I know multiple times when I was playing at a fairly high level, I would run off the fence and make a lob.
Yeah.
These things happen on a smaller court, when people are hitting these overheads that are going to go, 10 feet in the air, and you got to go all the way up there and put your foot on the fence to elevate yourself. So a game like Padel is going to also kind of help you with those skills. But that, again, you know, that's another really fun thing to do. If you've got the indoor space, right, do it. And then you've got then you have a rainy day activity that's very similar to tennis, and especially will help with double skills. Yeah, I would say I think Padel is amazing, and the same with platform tennis. And then, you know, there's also a training aspect too, because the points tend to be pretty long. You don't really get out of there easily with a. I mean, the only short rally would be where somebody doesn't return the serve.
Yeah.
You know, if they return the serve, then you're looking at, you know, a 10-shot rally or more. And I've seen
every time.
I've seen points that go on for a couple of minutes.
And that's tough. It's tough to be able to go minute after minute. I mean, one of the things in tennis is the average point's about 17 seconds?
Less than that. No,
less than that.
On hard court, it's like 7 seconds. No.
Well, the average shot rally is 3.5.
Yeah.
3.5 shots is the average length of a rally. So,
right.
You know, serve 4 seconds for the ball to get back, 4 seconds for the ball to get back.
Right.
So we're looking at about 12 seconds or so.
No, actually, I think a hard court point, the average point is 4 seconds, and on clay it's 7 seconds.
Okay.
You know, so obviously on clay there are some very long points that drive that up. But
especially in women's 3-0 doubles.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because they got to keep hitting that cross court ground stroke, and nobody's picking that ball off going across the middle.
Yeah,
but platform tennis is amazing, and I think so far it's the most popular in colder climates because
definitely up north.
Because you got the heater, you got the heaters that melt the whatever is happening there.
And it goes right through the floor.
Yeah, so you can play in the dead of winter and get out there and get a good workout. But I mean, I think that would be fun just about anywhere. And I think that's a great thing to do if your space at your club has a minimum amount of flat space to work with, because basically the platform goes up sort of on stilts, and you end up with a flat surface. So putting those in is a great way to keep your people playing racket sports if your court space is limited by your geology of your club.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Bill, do you have any other? I think we touched about everything on the list. Do you have any more that you'd like to add to that?
I mean, I think the bottom line is that if you make these alternative racket sports something that you celebrate and you enjoy, and your goal is to get more people playing tennis and giving hope to your people who can no longer play tennis that they still can play something, then you're only going to help yourself grow the game.
Absolutely.
So that's the bottom line. But I think people do themselves a disservice when they are fighting too hard against something that actually could end up helping them, with the exception being like my friend in Visalia, who's having a hard time because people are just taking over, and there's no sort of civic sharing. It's just this takeover. So to some extent, you have to be able to fight for your right to party.
Yeah. Definitely. So I don't know if that was a Beastie Boys quote.
It might have been. It could have been.
It could have been. Anyway, Bill, thank you for joining. And we look forward to next week when we talk a little bit more about the industry of tennis, and appreciate your time in coming on.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Thanks. Have a good one.